Hi, this is Mary Bukavalis and you're with What's My Scene, Star Scene, and today we have the nicest person in music industry, Mr. Wally Kempton. Hey Wally, how you going?
Hello, Mary. How are you?
I'm
What should
well.
I say? Oh,
That's how I usually see you, yeah, that's right.
yeah, that's a bit of a. Sorry, folks. It was a bit of an in-joke.
Mm.
Mary's usually got a camera strapped around her neck, and I see her publicly and go, "No photos, please."
Wally, I could go on and on about your experience in the music industry and accolades would take hours. So here's just a
Well,
few.
I've got no plans.
You've worked at
Joking, of
radio
course.
stations, venues, record companies, distributors. You've been a booking agent, artist manager, tour manager, and of course, musician, member of Even and the Meanies. And now it's coming up to your, I know you've done a lot, you're coming up to your second year anniversary as a record label founder with Cheer Squad Records and Tapes. Wow,
Yep.
what a list.
You know, had a lot of time. I'm 52 plus, so you know.
A few years ago, what made you come up with the idea that you had enough time to make a record label?
Well, I looked into my crystal ball and I saw a pandemic and that I wouldn't have anything else to do. So I thought, if I start it now, I'll have a few releases behind me when this shit hits the fan. I always wanted to do one, but I never had the means to do it. And then I still am managing Mini Bikes and Money for Rope, and they both had fantastic second albums ready to be released. And I was just trying my hardest as a two-bit manager to try and find a record label to release them. And on both bands, the labels that continually go, "Wow, this sounds amazing." I can now see and hear why you've been persisting with these guys all these years. But so great, let's put the record out there. And they go, "No, it doesn't fit what we're doing right now. It's not right for us." And I'd had so many of those happen that I just, in the end, just went, "How does that sound?" And I put them out myself. So that's pretty much what happened.
Well
Yeah.
done.
So that was the catalyst for getting it started, and I'd always wanted to do it anyway. And then, the first actual release, though, even though Mini Bikes was, catalogue number CRT 001, and Money for Rope was CRT 002. The first one was actually Los Chicos from Spain because I was organising a tour for them for November of 2018. So when I was talking to them, I discovered they had a new album about to come out in England and Europe. And I just said, can I do the Australian version? And one thing led to another, and that was the first ever release.
Excellent.
September 7th, 2018.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah. And since then, I mean, you've named 3 of the bands, but you've also helped a lot of other bands, and you've brought back a few older vinyls. And
after Los Chicos, I put the Money for Rope record out called Picture Us. It's a fantastic release. Then I did a Jasmine cassette record. Who was Jasmine's one half of that comedy country duo Bird Cloud, but that has been out to Australia a couple of times. But Jasmine's solo stuff is just polar opposite, really. It's just great pop music, and she's working on a new record at the moment. So hopefully I'll get to put that out next year. But then the reissues kind of help finance the new stuff. So without doing the reissues, I wouldn't be able to put out, like, I've got a Vacations record, a band from Newcastle, coming out in a month's time. But without the Snout and Jersey reissues that I've just put out, I wouldn't be able to finance that one. So it's all swings and roundabouts. So the reissues help, because the reissues they're not necessarily guaranteed sellers, but they're fairly, they've proven to be quite popular anyway. The Snout one I've already put out, and the Snout one that's coming out. Little Spirits, Sandpit, the Chris Wilson one I did went really well. It's fun. I enjoy doing it.
I think a lot of people, the fans, don't really like the fact that they only had CD copies of something. So the fact that they can now get it on vinyl, they love.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, all my reissues have never been available on vinyl before. So that's the part of the impetus behind doing, the way I select the stuff that I want to do. And of course, if I think it's going to be a popular release, then that adds to it. But the first and foremost is that I've got to actually like it. if I'm going to blow my dough on something, I might as well do it on something I love.
Well, I'm glad you've got good taste.
Well, thank you, man.
Now, this one has come out on vinyl, but have you thought of reissuing this?
Well, it's on all go-go, isn't it? Funnily enough, I probably could. That was a great release. We gave that away. I don't know whether because but that was just good old days. That one. That's a great release. That great shade of blue too. That 10-inch.
Yeah, I love how you do the splatter vinyls and the limited editions. They're great.
Yeah, some of them come out good. The Nick Craft album Minerva that we put out last year. That he's just got some splatter ones done of that. It's clear with black splatter in it. They look amazing.
Yeah.
So that's a new edition.
But do they sound as good as this?
You know what? The funny thing is, I'm not a fan of live records, but our mate Greg recorded. I know it sounds weird, doesn't it? Our mate Greg recorded our gig, our 25th anniversary gig at the Hi-Fi Bar and Ballroom, formerly known as, now called Max Watts. And he sent me a mix of it, and I thought, this actually sounds pretty good. It kind of captures, our, how we do sound live, and a good feeling. It was a good vibe. I know that's really weird. I'll go to live gigs until the cows come home, and I'll listen to records till the cows come home, but I don't necessarily marry the two. I don't know why. It's a silly thing, but that Meanies live recording that Greg did at the Hi-Fi sounded so good. I thought, well, yeah. Funny little secret, viewers. That set that day was actually 22 or 23 songs long, but there's only 12 songs on it because the other 11 sounded like shit.
So it wasn't just your choice; it was like narrowed down by necessity.
Exactly. It was either flat singing or out of tune guitars, or we just stuffed up the song or whatever. And I took all the banter out too because I think we must have been at the end of our 25th anniversary tour, so we're a bit over it and we've got a bit drunk. So the in-between song banter was just trash. So I took that
it wasn't from an audience point of view. That was a great.
Everyone didn't have a great time on the night. It was a great evening. I remember that much, and we put that out in time for the 30th anniversary tour last year. So that's we hadn't had a chance to record our new album because Link was living in Spain and Jaws was living in Bali. So we all came together for the tour. So we thought, God, it'd be stupid not to put something out in time for the tour. And Poison City Records had already done all the reissues. So I thought, what about that Greg recording of our 25th anniversary? So that's how that came about.
What's next for the Meanies and Even?
For the Meanies, well, Link's coming home in November for a bit. And I think we'll be able to get. Who knows? All this COVID crap going on. Who's allowed to do what? I mean, there was a couple of festivals that were meant to be doing in June that got moved to November, and I don't even know whether they're still going to go ahead. Of, the promoter Empire Touring was saying that he'd still like them to go ahead, even if it's a reduced capacity. But I don't know whether he's going to be allowed to. And will us Victorians be allowed to get up there and do it? Or whether do we have to be in quarantine for 2 weeks when we get back, which would be a punish. So who knows? I have no idea. But in a perfect world, when Link gets back from Spain, we would do a tour. We haven't done a tour for Desperate Measures, the last album we put out. Yep. So it'd be nice to actually go and do some record launches, even though they'd be months and months after the release of the record, but hey, whatever. And maybe do some more recording. Who knows? Only takes us about a week to get an album done. So, no rest for the wicked.
Last week, you sent out an email about a notification about the pressing plant. What's happening there?
Well, they're still trying to find if there's any, leeway, I guess you could say, in the laws and what's going on to actually open for at least a couple of days a week, because there's machinery in that warehouse that needs to be operating, otherwise it'll seize and be useless, and it'll put everyone back for months and months. So they're still trying to work that out, and they're pretty confident that they'll be able to reopen again fairly soon. So hopefully that means that all the pressings that I've got coming up will only be like a month late at maximum. So at the moment we're adhering to the release date digitally at least, so that the albums will come out on the release date as scheduled, and then the vinyl just when we can get it back. I mean, I'm still waiting on Jersey test pressings, for example, because of the shutdown, whereas that album actually came out last Friday. Yeah. So in reality, that's going to be at least a month late for the vinyl, but it is up on iTunes and Apple Music and Spotify and Amazon, and
I'm sure everyone is so understanding.
Yeah. All their platforms. Yeah. Oh, you asked about Even before too, where, well, Ash and Matt are at least in the process of making a new album. I usually come in at the end when everything's done and have my bass parts last. I'm really not a fan of the studio either. Isn't that weird? I'm a bloody musician that's been in bands for 30 plus years. And I don't like the recording studio. Maybe I've got ADD. It's never been diagnosed, because I just can't sit still. And the studio is like a lot of sitting around doing sweet FA. It drives me mad. So I guess since the advent of laptops, it makes it a bit easier. I've got something to do. I can remember when Meanies, not Meanies, Even were making a record at Woodstock in St Kilda, a studio there. And would have been the second one. We did 2 albums there. And in the downtime, thankfully, because the assistant engineer in the studio was a Carlton fan like I am, and he brought in all his videos, VHS cassettes of Carlton grand final victories. So I just watched every single one of them whilst waiting for my turn to play bass.
Compare the Even sound and the Meanies sound in food form. How would you compare it?
I don't know. Would Even be bangers and mash and the Meanies be fish and chips? I wouldn't have a clue.
Finally.
Yep.
What's your scene?
Lots of football, lots of music, lots of mates, lots of just hanging out. That's my scene. That's what I like to do.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Wally. Good luck with it all, and talk to you soon. Hopefully see you in person.
Yeah, wouldn't that be novel?